All right, everyone. Our new little thing so that you don't have to stare at me for 30 seconds while I hit the retweets button. Welcome in. We are live. This is the franchise episode. That's right, the Baker Mayfield episode 6 of the Barking Brown shows. I have the wrong captions up. Here we go. I am your host, Jacob. I'm at Roachism13. It is on the screen for those of you watching the videos. If you're watching the Spotify, the links to mine, Nick's, and Sam's Twitters will be in the description when I figure out the time to do that. The man to my, your right, my left, the man that never misses, Nick Carnes, at Carnesies817 on Twitter. We have an amazing show for you tonight. We're now on Spotify. We're trying to get on Apple Podcasts. We're on the YouTubes. We're on the Twitters. You have to hear my annoying voice and see my annoying face way more than you ever bargained for. Nick, how are we doing this evening?
Feeling great tonight. We've got a guest coming along with us today. We have a whole bunch of exciting topics. You know, it's amazing how I keep saying to myself, it's the off season, and we're going to run out of stuff to talk about eventually, and we never run out of stuff to talk about.
Well, then we do the savvy move, and we bring in a much smarter person than us to talk. And, well, that was mean. I shouldn't take shots at your intelligence, just mine. So we bring in people that are more prepared to talk about stuff. So we're gonna get right to our guest. If you're on Brown's Twitter and you don't know who this man is, then you are wrong. The guy reports over. He has more great jobs on his Twitter bio than I will ever have in my lifetime, and I'm already stuttering. Writes over at Dog Pound Daily. Has an amazing thing that he does on his Twitter with all these clip threads. And it just, you know what? I'm going to stop talking and just bring in Sam Penix. Sam, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this more prepared and smarter person. Who you guys bringing on tonight?
Buddy, I hate to tell you. It's you.
Might be disappointed.
Oops. Sam, we're really excited. We're just gonna dive right on into this. I'll put this graphic up here for you guys for where we're going to focus on a pair of D tackles. We're going to talk about the defense a little bit. Apparently we're doing a Baker Mayfield talk. Apparently I put that in there. I didn't know that. So I guess that's where the conversation is going tonight. Truth be told, I don't know a better way than to just jump right on into this. So Sam, I think where I'd like to start is with Malik McDowell. And that is because you wrote a piece, was it last week or the week before, on Malik?
It was probably last week, I want to say. They kind of all flow together for me. Just stream of consciousness. It's like, oh, there's an article on. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah. So with Malik McDowell was to me a little bit of a controversial move, I guess, just because of the off the field stuff. Hasn't played in the league, was drafted in 2017. Just some kind of things that I think are interesting with him. I just think it was the most un-Andrew Berry analytical move that I think he had made up to this point. But I've followed your work for a while, and you use something that really, I don't see you, like, this is what I want to preface. I don't see you throwing around the term Hall of Fame with every player that you write. And I know it wasn't like a guarantee, obviously, or anything like that, but I don't think I've seen you evaluate a player and put a piece out where the name, or, the phrase Hall of Fame was put in it. And that's what I saw in this Malik McDowell. And I know this is all 2016 film that we're trying to tear apart, 5 years later. But, there's my dog. He's in the backfield. He is rascaling up that bed. He's messing up all the
Why don't
pillows.
you pet him for me?
Yeah, he can see him over here. Hey, buddy, what you doing there? He gets up there and he knocks all my pillows onto the to the floor, and then he buries bones in my covers, and it looks like I don't make my bed, but I do. It's just my dog hates made beds.
Sure. Yeah.
It makes it lines up really well, and Sam, we're really excited to talk to you because we initially when the Browns players got into OTAs, rookie camp, and Malik McDowell was there. There were reports that like he looks in really good shape, and it looks there's some optimism, there's some excitement. So I brought that up to Jacob in a previous show, and we touched on it a bit. And then you posted the clip thread of Malik McDowell being awesome in college, and so I think that really brought to the forefront there's some potential here. And so yeah, I would love to talk about some of that because I'm excited about if he does end up making the team and what this could be.
Yeah, I mean, potential is definitely the right word for it, simply because we haven't seen him do it. I would keep looking at the depth chart on the defensive line and see 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 guys who are in the running for roster spots. You see maybe 8, 9, 10 spots available depending on how deep they decide to go there. And I keep looking at it, bring up these names, and then our buddy Marcus Harvey would keep chiming in. He's like, Malik McDowell's making the team, guys. Okay, and I'm like, dude, he hasn't played in 5 years. Like that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. And then I finished watching Jadeveon Clowney clip thread coming whenever I edit these 120 clips or whenever.
Okay, all right.
So I was like, well, I want to watch something. So it's like, well, I watched all the rookies, watched the free agent additions. There's this guy, second round pick, mocked in the top 10 consistently back during his draft class. What the heck, football is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like watching the football. So I went ahead and did it, scoured the interwebs and YouTube for as much tape as I could find. And I put together, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 games over his 2 seasons as a starter. And I just kept my jaw was on the floor, every other play. It seemed like it's like this guy was absolutely destroying games, and he was being, he was like the only guy on that Michigan State defense who was doing a single thing. So he was being consistently game planned for exclusively. He was really young, and he didn't know what he was doing from a technical standpoint, at all. And he was still absolutely dominant when he wanted to be. So given, the kind of high-end flashes that he put up on his tape and the physical tools that he had coming out, elite length, elite height, his power for a guy that tall and when he's able to keep leverage, which he's very good at, when he wants to do it, it's incredible. The guy is one of the most physically talented players that I've ever seen. And I think I said in the article, since 2016, there's no defensive tackle has even come close to this guy from a physical standpoint. And it's ridiculous. I think I also said if he hadn't, gotten in the ATV incident and, all those off-field issues and, the lack of effort and drive and passion to improve, if none of that existed and he was just a standard guy who works hard and stays clean, stays on the straight and narrow, he'd probably be considered the second best defensive tackle in the league today by a long shot.
Wow.
Aaron Donald is quite possibly the best defensive player to play the game ever. So you're not gonna reach him most likely. But it was incredible to see someone like that just dominate the way that he did, and not even know how he was doing it. And he isn't 25 yet. He's not old. It's been 5 years, but he was drafted young, so he's still really young. He still has an entire career ahead of him if he wants that. And I really hope he does, because if he puts in the work and he's motivated, and this could very well be his last chance at an NFL career. So if he wants it, he's going to make this team. He's going to play a lot at both tackle and end, and he's going to make a huge impact.
When we started these a couple of weeks ago on our second episode, where I've been doing these little mock scouting reports on all the picks, and after your article came out, I was like, wow, we might do McDowell and Togiai this week, because that's just where it fell chronologically. And so I started doing the McDowell film, and there was a couple of different scouting reports from back in 16 from some people evaluating him, because he was the same draft as Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett went number 1 in that draft. And I heard more than one person say he could be the most impactful defensive lineman in this class, counting Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and you had Jonathan Allen in that class too. That was a good defensive line class. Derek Barnett. Yeah. There were some really good prospects.
Tack McKinley was in that class too.
There was a lot of hype around him. I mean, the talent is there. It's all there.
I took a look just because I knew we were doing this at some scouting reports from when he was drafted, and the first thing that popped off to me is that it's one of the scouting reports from the NFL.com I was reading said, he has similar physical traits and abilities to Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner. And I was like, well, that sounds good to me.
Who could have possibly had a connection to those guys?
Interesting.
Joe Woods. Oh.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's a San Francisco connection, right? Okay. Yeah. It's a good one.
So I want to ask you this, Sam, because I'm going to forget it, and it's on the top of my head right now. And fans of this show know that I will forget it if I don't ask it right now. So, and we'll get into Togiai a little bit down the road. So I heard this past week Jeff Lloyd did his first shot at the 53. Obviously we don't have a lot to go on the final 53, but his first shot at the 53, I have a really tough time thinking they keep less than 10 on the line defensively, just because of who's there. And the way he broke it down and the way I have kind of broke it down was 5 and 5 tackles, 5 edge rushers. I want to know what you think, because I think someone mentioned this somewhere to me on Twitter, and I had this conversation. Could you see a scenario where they keep 10, where it's actually 6 tackles, where it kind of goes like this 10, because these guys can play, like you said, both Malik Jackson and Malik McDowell can play that power end, that power edge rusher. So could you potentially see something just completely wild where they keep 60 tackles? Like if they say Malik Jackson, what would it be? Elliott, Togiai, Wilson, who am I forgetting? Billings, McDowell, and then keeping Clowney, Miles, Tack, and Curtis Weaver. Could you see a situation where something wild like that might play out because Malik McDowell's – because I think Wilson and Togiai feel really good to me about making the roster, but could you see a situation where they kept all 3 of those guys, Togiai, Wilson, and McDowell?
I could, and I think it's probably my preferred scenario just because of how I think they want to play defense. And how versatile some of those guys in that room are. You can say Jackson and McDowell can bump outside if needed, and you can move Garrett and Clowney inside if needed. And Clowney's probably going to play a bunch inside. So, having 4 guys at least who can move around and do different things on that line, and even Marvin Wilson has played at that's not where you put him, but that's where Florida State put him. So
I still don't understand why they did that. That was just terrible.
But I mean, they have 10 or 11 guys who probably deserve to be on an NFL roster, and of those 10 or 11 guys, someone like Porter Gustin, he's a quality 4th or 5th end to me, but he doesn't provide any outside in versatility like the other guys can. So. And based on that picture of Curtis Weaver, that guy looks like he's 280 now.
Wow.
So maybe they move him inside sometimes. So, there's a ton of competition and depth and talent in that room. And, that's a good thing because based on what we know about Joe Woods, he really likes to rotate those guys in and out, not only based on situation, but just to keep them fresh throughout the game, fresh and healthy. And you obviously want to make sure you're doing that, especially with your two starting edge rushers, because they both have a history of getting banged up. So if you can keep those guys fresh and healthy for the end of the game, that last quarter when they're needed the most, I think that's fantastic. And if you can do that and have people like McDowell, who has game-wrecking ability on his own and is probably the second most talented player on the roster, that's great, because you're not, in an ideal world, you're not losing that much of an impact even when your stud players are on the sideline, saving them for the end of the game. So just having 10 guys on that line gives you not only versatility and depth, but it gives you, almost a legitimate two deep depth chart where you have two different starting lines. There are worse lines in the NFL than McKinley, Weaver, Wilson, and Elliott.
That's crazy.
So if that's your two, and then you've got guys like Togiai and Curtis Weaver and McDowell, mean, this could be really fun if everything works out.
That's one of the things I like what you said there about keeping guys fresh, because one of the things that I like to look at from last year is just snap counts, and both Sheldon Richardson and Larry Ogunjobi were way near the top.
Oh yeah, they were. It was insane. Like you want those guys to be like maybe a third of that, just because So that's probably what I'm looking for. You keep Billings on the field for rundowns, and you have your rush package or NASCAR of guys like McDowell at tackle, Jackson at tackle, and Clowney at tackle. So keeping those snap counts more evenly distributed, not so evenly distributed in total, but not, you want to be intentional about what situations you're putting these guys on the field in. And I think that's really important, because you obviously don't want your run stuffer, rushing the passer on third and 7 necessarily. So, but they didn't have that luxury last year. They just had to keep, they kept those guys on the field every single down. And you could see as the season went on, their effectiveness dropped, and the line as a whole suffered because you were without Garrett, you lost Vernon, and those guys just had way too much responsibility. And it was by necessity. There was nothing else they could do. But now they go from an extreme lack of talent to being forced to cut some good players here. So that's always a good problem to have.
Hopefully they can avoid getting into a situation like they did against Las Vegas, where you could see the whole defense was gassed, and they were just going to get 4.5 yards of carry on every down that they wanted, just because the defensive line had nothing left in the tank.
Just right up the gut. Josh Jacobs could have got 4.5 50 times if he really, really wanted it at some point like that.
I can hear Hugh Jackson saying anyone can run through that hole.
I want to ask one thing, given what we just said about the potential defensive line depth, because the Sheldon Richardson stuff is still out there, and so I guess this is like a 2-part question. Does Sheldon Richardson offer the Browns something that they don't currently have? And does it make sense? Would it make sense to potentially displace one of these young guys to bring him back?
So he does offer them proven ability, which is something that you can't say for McDowell, Togiai, Wilson, and to a certain degree, Elliott. Yeah. We really didn't get to see him play his role last year, or even in 2019, because he hasn't been able to play next to a true space-eating one tech in Cleveland. And that was supposed to be Billings last year. And I think had Billings played, the run defense as a whole would not only have been better, but Richardson would have been better in a vacuum. Because Ogunjobi just wasn't that guy. And he never, he wasn't supposed to be put in that position, but they didn't have a choice. So he does provide you proven ability, someone you can rely on, what you're going to get out of him. He's a consistent player. He may not be exceptional, but he's solid and he's consistent. But he's getting up there in age, and he's not going to come anywhere near as cheap as some of these other guys currently on the roster. And like you said, if you're bringing in Richardson, you're moving on from one of these guys like McDowell or Wilson or Elliott or Togiai maybe, but are you getting a better player, like a player that's more able to contribute in 2021? Yeah, probably. But is that, like, how much of an impact does that make weighed against the financial impact and the potential impact that player that you're moving on from can make next year, 2 years from now, etc.?
Yeah.
So I think based on how much they paid Wilson, just the fact that they brought in McDowell, I think having as many people in that room as they have right now, it just kind of signals that Plan A does not feature Richardson in it right now. So
yeah,
that's how I feel. But
okay.
Yeah, I got into this conversation with people on Twitter about it because I said, I was sad when they let Richardson go. It was the first cut of a good player that we've had to experience as a fan base in 7,500 years, and it stung because we liked him, we liked the personality. He seemed like kind of a cool guy to be around and work with potentially. From, not that I know a fucking thing, but it just. It kind of hurt, but I said on Twitter, I said, the more I start looking at it, I was having an issue a couple of weeks ago. We had the question pop up: do they keep 5 defensive tackles? Like, it came up during the show, and I said then, and this was before I did any kind of real look at McDowell. I said then that I couldn't find a way to keep less than 5 defensive tackles. Like, it just, and that was without Sheldon Richardson. That was after this cut had already happened. And I said, I like Sheldon a lot, but I'm kind of pretty much at the point now that, let's say McDowell goes out there and has an injury in camp, or Togiai has an injury in camp and something like that. It's a completely different story.
Yeah.
I mean, in a situation like that, you got a proven starter that knows this situation. But I think you said it perfectly, and I saw some other people say that online today. Nobody individually is as good in that room right now as what Sheldon is, proven wise.
Right.
But the room as it currently is constructed is probably better for now, for the future, if it continues the way it is, as opposed to bringing him back in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's definitely a better situation than they were in last year, not to mention significantly cheaper. You have more guys under contract. But it does hurt to lose him because you know what you're getting out of him. Yeah. And they didn't necessarily replace him at a 1-to-1 value. But I think that just indicates kind of where they want to go with that position group, and that is constantly rotating out different skill sets based on the situation and not having guys like Richardson playing that 100-something snaps a year. So
yeah,
it's definitely, this defense as a whole, I think, is going to take some getting used to for a lot of people, just because of how different it is, or wants to be from the prototypical NFL defense that we've come to know and hate. But it's going to evolve. It's going to be somewhat progressive, and they're going to keep building it. It's not even close to being done yet, but it's a heck of a lot closer than it was last season. And there's a lot of talent at all 3 levels, and they're going to keep molding it into what they want it to be. And I think that's a defense that's designed specifically to slow down opposing passing attacks. And that means moving on from guys who are making $10, $12 million like Richardson was. He does provide a good amount as a pass rusher, but can you get like maybe 60% of his impact for 10% of the cost with somebody else? You probably can. And I think that's what they want to do. I know that defensive tackle, if you read into EPA all that much, it's one of the least valuable positions. It might be the second least valuable after running back, if I'm not mistaken. So,
wow,
just based on that based on that one metric, it's not the NLB all, but taking a lot into account, unless you have a real game changer like prime Fletcher Cox or Aaron Donald at 3 years old, it's really difficult to justify investing a ton into that room. Yeah. And I think how the Browns went about improving that room this offseason improves that, because they got Marvin Wilson for nothing. It only cost the money, and he was projected to be this first-round pick preseason. And he's gonna play a lot for them. They got Togia, who some people had going as high as round 2. Dude's a ball of talent. Late fourth round, like way late. Like, had they taken him at 91, I think a lot of people would have been happy, because that was more. Okay. That was even later than he was often projected to go. And then they bring in this elite talent McDowell for nothing. So they've found a lot of value at that position for not a lot of cost. And I think that signals a change in direction from where they were a year ago. And I think that's more of what they want to do moving forward.
So I have a hard-hitting question that you won't be asked anywhere else. Nick knows what this question is. He doesn't like it that I ask everybody this question.
I don't like it. I kind of like it.
You like it?
It's grown on me.
All right. And anybody listening, comment in the comments if you're watching live and let me know what you think. But Sam, I need to know, is cereal soup?
I've actually thought about this one a lot. And I still haven't come up with a good answer. I think definitionally it probably is. But I don't know, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Wow.
It depends on literally on the perspective you're viewing it from.
Yeah.
Like if you turn your head sideways, the meat is between the bread, right side up. So yes, it's a sandwich, right? So it's all about perspective. Yeah. That's my answer. It's relative. It's relative.
Like, look, we got people weighing in. Look at this. It's cold soup. That's right. It's cold soup. This is our number one fan here. This is Ed in Columbus. He says, I like the D potentially having lots of rotations because it could keep salaries down in a fresh 40. Yeah, I think that hits it right on the head. I mean, we're looking at these massive extensions next year, and a potential, is it like 25 million it could jump is where they put the ceiling next year.
Isn't it like 189 right now? I think it's supposed to go like 205 or 206 or something like that. So it's a pretty significant jump.
Yeah.
Okay. And thankfully. Oh my God. But you also have now potentially 21 20 million is where they're at right now that you could have it in rollover because of this Sheldon Richardson thing. I just think that once you removed the emotion from it and then saw how the draft and then, this free agency, these undrafted free agency kind of pulled it in, I think it made the most sense. But I would argue we have a weigh in. It's not hot, so I'm going no. However, it could be considered porridge. Okay.
All right.
I feel like that's a good compromise.
I feel like you can get an argument in there.
I can appreciate that one. That one's acceptable.
I saw a graphic today. I didn't actually know this, but it said that the Browns are spending the most on offense of any team in the NFL right now.
Yep.
And that, I knew it was high up there, but I didn't realize it was the most. So when you look at what the Browns are doing on defense, and bringing in all these defensive tackles that are cheaper, it makes a lot of sense as to the direction, because you're going to have to, no matter what you do, and no matter who you keep and who you pay and or not, you have to find cheap contributors for the long term. And I don't want to go too deeply down this rabbit hole, but in the Julio Jones discussions, I think something that a lot of people don't consider is that if you give up a second round pick, that is potentially another 4 years of a cheap contributor that the Browns would lose out on. And so I think when you look down the road for the Browns, it's like getting those guys cheaply is absolutely paramount based on just the situation of the team.
Right, and I think related to that is you mentioned how expensive the offense is right now, and I don't think so. They have the most expensive tight end group in the league. I think they're like seventh or eighth at running back, third at receiver. Whatever they're paying the offensive line, that's absolutely worth it, right? You're getting elite level, best in the league performance out of that, right? You got a lot of production out of your quarterback last year. You have the best running back in the league and probably another top 10, 15 guy behind him. Acceptable. You can argue that running back isn't worth paying, but I think based on the amount right now, that's perfectly fine for what they're getting out of that position group.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can argue that they're getting proper return on investment from the receiver or the tight end group. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they will not be paying the first tight end group or the third receiver group in 2022. So obviously adding Julio would require moving on right now from one of those two LSU guys in the room right now. That's just a necessity because you can't go into next season with just $5 million worth of rollover because that prevents you from re-signing, extending one of your core players who you need long term. So that was the biggest hurdle. But if you're okay with getting rid of one of those guys, now you have to look at the compensation that it's going to take to acquire him. In this case, a second round pick was the main prize in that deal. Based on the contract situation of that room, you're probably looking at the team taking a receiver in either the first or second round next year. I would say that's fairly likely. So if you're going to be doing that already, maybe you might as well take Julio Jones with that second round pick. I don't know. But it's a completely legitimate argument to say that they need those picks for cheap depth long term, not just cheap depth, but cheap starters. And obviously not every second round pick is going to turn into a top 15 prospect like they've got in the past 2 years. Yeah. But, if you're good at your job, second round picks should be starter. So those picks are very valuable. And, we know from their guardrails that they value picks in the first 3 rounds very highly because those are where you get the best return on investment because they're not that expensive and they're quality contributors, whether they're starting or they're coming out, off the bench and playing a lot of snaps. So there is definitely a legitimate argument to saying that they can't afford Julio Jones financially or compensation wise. But I also think there's a legitimate argument to say that they can. So it's definitely a two-sided issue. Obviously, it's not relevant anymore because that they didn't make the offer, they didn't land the player. But I think it's indicative of a coming issue that's going to be a hot topic next offseason. And there's going to be a lot of people mad whichever way they end up addressing that receiver room. So it's going to be a bloodbath, I'm sure.
If people thought that these scenarios and these fights we saw on Twitter this year were bad, holy shit. Just buckle up. I'm going to catch up real quick over here in the comments. Ed wanted us to know that Julio to the Titans, but the best Titans have Denzel coaching him. He wants to know if you remember the Titans. Do you remember the Titans?
I may or may not remember the Titans. I remember beating the Titans last year. I remember that vividly.
Hey.
So,
I like what you did there.
Yeah.
I like what you did there. We just got to weigh in over here going on with the good points. See, I told you Sam was smart. He tried to downplay it.
Sam's over here just carrying the team right now.
It depends on your definition of smart. I've been called smart before, but not in that tone.
So have I. So I don't know if you saw this. I want to ask you about this. If not, Nick will enlighten you. So Nick decided that he wanted to get his weekend started correctly last weekend. And he thought when he woke up, well, not when he woke up, because I guess he wakes up at the ass crack of dawn, but about the time we were waking up, he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stir the pot and start a 2-day war with Steelers fans on Twitter. And so he woke up and he said, I choose violence. He chose fucking violence. Sam, did you get to see any of this, or does Nick need to tell you? I'm telling you, it went on for days.
It did.
I did see a little bit of it. I do my best to kind of stay out of that kind of drama. It's very entertaining to watch from a distance, though.
Yes,
I would very much like to hear the full story. However, so
oh yes, it's a doozy.
You know what? I didn't really intend to. It wasn't my purpose to enrage Steelers Twitter.
Oh sure.
I just, you know what? I was looking and I think back to that playoff game a lot and the way that
I do too.
And I understand that Ben Roethlisberger literally handed the Browns points, but when the Browns scored 48 points, which is insane when you think about it. So I went back and I looked, and in the Steelers' entire playoff history, they have never scored 48 points. And so, I'm just saying, right, because they in particular, and lots, I mean, you can't go a day on Twitter without seeing Baker Mayfield getting slandered one way or the other. But they like to say that Baker's carried by his team and that he's not actually that good. And so it just felt right to say that in Baker's first playoff game ever, he leads the Browns to 48 points, which the Steelers have never, in their illustrious, history of playoff victories, they have never done. And it just started from there, and off we went.
Have you ever seen that? I'm sure you've seen this. You've ever seen somebody, and this was the one that got me the most, but he gets quote tweet. I always go and check on his quote tweets whenever he throws out one like that, because I just know they're going to be awesome. And this Steelers, the thing that gets me the most about this is he doesn't put hashtag Steelers. He doesn't put, he doesn't at anybody, but it was mostly Steelers fans that somehow ended up in his mentions. And we got this lady, and I'm going to act out the tweet. And she said, how about you drop that one fucking game like we've always owned y'all? And I'm like, whoa. That was she did the clap hands after every single word that she typed, and I'm like, there is a lot of pent up aggression behind that tweet. And I just, have you ever? I know, and I was going to ask you about this. I loved the Julio Jones to Cleveland. I love your little subtle. I like to call them subtle trolls that I see you do every once in a while, and I have a good.
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Never happens. Never done it. I like to. Have you ever sent out a tweet that got people so angry that they had to clap at you?
Gotta think about this.
I know, because
probably something I said about Jarvis Landry that may have gotten some people riled up.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
there it is.
Yeah,
I can still hear the clapping in my ears. I have tinnitus from that now.
I did. I'm really glad, Jacob. I'm really glad you brought that up, because Sam, I kept in my brain that you had the Julio Jones to Cleveland in your Twitter name, but then I totally forgot until just now. So me bringing up Julio. So were you an advocate of the Browns trading for Julio?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the subtle, oh my God, what am I going to do? What happens if I say yes?
Yes.
I would. But legitimately, because obviously I told you the side that I ended up being. I was excited about it. If they would have done it, I'm hopping on the bandwagon. I'm supporting it. I'm getting excited about it. But, obviously I told you where I'm at because I think I tend to look long-term a little more. But I would love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, like I completely understand the other side to this. Like this is one of those issues where I don't think neither side is wrong. Like it's not black and white to me. It's just I have seen that Chiefs game far too many times at this point, and it just frustrates me to no end how much of a disservice that team, that receiving core, that does to Baker Mayfield. And I know that adding Schwartz and getting Beckham back fixes a lot of that. It makes a huge impact. Is it going to be enough to prevent the elite secondaries in the league from, closing that gap on those receivers? Maybe, maybe not. So my viewpoint on this is I want every single receiver that I trot out there to be a threat. I want them to have the ability to, put fear into the heart of that corner that they're lined up across from. And right now the Browns have two guys who do that. One has never played in the NFL, and the other has not been himself statistically since 2016. So that, coupled with the fact that Mayfield is the best quarterback in the NFL when throwing deep, I want more. And Julio Jones is more. Like, that guy is, I know he's older. I know he missed a lot of games last year. He is still spectacular. Like, Browns fans have not seen someone on his level as a receiver other than that one Josh Gordon season. Like, imagine adding that Josh Gordon, focused not on, substances before every game, add him to that receiving group, and guess what? Teams can no longer stack the box against Chubb and Hunt. They can no longer blitz Mayfield a lot. They can't play man-to-man, cover one, press man, and basically say, look, we know that Mayfield is on this absolute tear since week 7. He's playing like one of the 3 best passers in the league right now. We don't care. Your receivers can't get open against us, and we don't even have like a top 15 secondary. No pass rush either. Beat us through the air. We dare you. With Julio Jones in that offense, no one can do that. The Ravens can't do that. The Rams can't do that. The best secondaries in the league can't do that. No one is stopping that offense. And yes, there's only one ball, but there are enough plays to go around for everyone. And I know this applies to Schwartz as well, but just having Jones on the field, even when he's not getting the ball, he's making a tremendous impact because of that gravity that he has to draw people away and force the defense to be thinking about him at all times. And then suddenly Nick Chubb breaks free for a 50-yard touchdown because there are only 5-6 guys in the box. So financially, it was easily feasible just by swapping out one of the 2 receivers they already have. I think we all know. I think we know my stance on which one I would choose. That second-round pick, I mean, in a vacuum, that's obviously tremendous value for a guy as good as he is. Top 3, top 5 at the absolute worst. And, if I'm drafting receiver in the second round next year, I might as well make it Jones, right? And for the duration of his contract, with how much the Falcons have in dead cap right now, it's really, really team-friendly based on how good of a player he is. So I think it's obviously not easy to fit him into that cap space right now. And, losing that second-round pick would have been tough, but both were doable in my opinion, and the reward of that unstoppable offense was worth it to me. So that's just how I feel. I'm completely open to the other side of the table, and I know I can see how it's definitely not the most long-term thinking move.
Yeah.
But that's I want to win these next 2 Super Bowls, so that's just how I felt.
Ed, I think, capsulized it pretty well here. He says, JJ Watt, get him. Don't washed up. Jones, get him. Don't washed up. Fan is short for fanatic. I'll tell you what, there is no fan base in the NFL quite like the Browns at doing that. They'll be like, yeah, man, you need to come to Cleveland. He goes somewhere else and they'll be like, who gives a shit? He's a fucking bum.
I didn't want him anyway.
He sucks. Have you seen what J.J. Watt did the last 2 or 3 years? Julio Jones didn't play in 9 games last year. He's injury prone. Forget the fact that he's played at minimum 13 games in 9 of his 10 seasons. He's played the 13 game threshold. So wherever this Julio Jones is injury prone statement comes from, I don't know where it really comes from. I will never get over a team playing Daniel fucking Sorensen as a single high safety. What? I don't know. You might know the actual number on it. What was it, like 80% of the snaps? It felt like they just put Daniel Sorensen. You know what they did? They triple G'd it. They put Daniel Sorensen 15 feet downfield and said, everybody else, figure it out. Like you're in the box.
Yep. I went through and I charted what coverage they were in every single defensive snap, and I think it was like you said, it was an unbelievable amount of cover 0 and cover 1. Like no defense ever runs that much, ever, because teams are going to beat you deep. Browns going to beat them deep, and they had one of the best quarterbacks in the league at that point. So I see that, and I say, yes, Beckham is coming back. He's helping. He'll help that a lot. Like he has the potential to fix everything, absolutely everything. Like that guy's a Hall of Fame talent,
Yeah.
Are we going to see that guy again? I certainly hope so. Schwartz has that dominant trait. Like you can't ignore that. That helps too. Is that enough? We'll have to see. I certainly hope it is. But if it were me, I did not want to put myself in the position where I am pinning my Super Bowl hopes, make or break, on Anthony Schwartz developing quicker than anticipated and Odell Beckham not only staying healthy but returning to 2016 form. That's just how I felt. I didn't want to hedge my bets on that stuff, but that's what the Browns are doing, so I certainly hope it works out.
That is really interesting too, because the whole Browns offense, and it's like you said, Sam, the Chiefs defense wasn't even that it wasn't even a top 10 defense. And they were able to make the Browns offense look so condensed and so tight in that game. I think if either Odell or Anthony Schwartz doesn't provide that beat you deep threat, and the Browns end up seeing more defenses like that's scary. That's a scary thought, because there was just no. I have never seen a quarterback have to complete more tight window throws
exactly
than that game.
Yep, that's the whole point. Like Baker Mayfield's job should not be nearly as difficult as it is. Like that guy should be throwing. Like all you have to do is watch that Chiefs game. Now I know the Browns defense was practically non-existent. Like they were ravaged by injuries and they didn't have a ton of talent to begin with. But Mahomes was throwing to guys with like a 5 yard radius of space all around him. Meanwhile, Mayfield has to thread the needle every single time with a guy draped on his receiver, no yak whatsoever. That's the difference of the team that went to the Super Bowl and probably would have won if not for their injuries, and the team that lost in the divisional playoff. So there's got to be an improvement there, and the two guys they're getting can certainly make that improvement. But like I said, I didn't want to be relying on those two things happening in order to win a Super Bowl. So it's a very risky proposition that they're moving forward with here.
So we're pushing on time. We had a really good conversation tonight. I got a couple more questions I want to get to before we run out of time. Anthony Walker and I think this is just guys talking, but Anthony Walker this week compared JOK to Darius Leonard. He said it somewhere, during OTAs in this past week, and he said, JOK reminds him a lot of Darius Leonard. And I just want to say, like, if JOK can be 75% of Darius Leonard, like, I think JOK is kind of a little bit of a different player. I don't know, like, maybe I don't watch enough Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard is phenomenal. But I mean, I find JOK's best asset to me is in the slot. His ability to cover speed out of the slot. And I don't really know where Darius Leonard is. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if Darius Leonard's coverage skills are, I know, his range and his run defense and the things like that. I know how good he is. I don't know where he stacks up as, like covering tight ends and other guys in the slot. But what do you think about Anthony Walker's comments on JOK reminding him of Darius Leonard?
Well, Leonard is the will for the Colts. I mean, he kind of has to be. He's what, like 210? He might even be less than 210. Shit. Like he is light for a linebacker.
What am I thinking? You know what? I confused Darius Leonard and Anthony Walker. I totally just like ADHD'd the ever-loving hell out of that, man.
Jeez, we just signed a 205-pound Mike. Oh, dear.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell am I thinking about? And I was, well, that's
so he is extremely light for a linebacker. He weighs more like a safety. So comparing the two, at least physically, I think is not unfair. JOK is obviously he's faster. He's much more explosive. He's more agile. He's a better athlete, significantly better athlete. But I think that's the role they might try to put him into, at least initially, is that Malcolm Smith kind of passing down only will, where he's not being forced to play in the box or take on linemen, stack and shed blocks, because he's never done that. Like you can watch through his college tape, you can go back to high school. That's never been him. He's never been that in the box linebacker. So until it happens, like I'm not totally convinced that that's going to be his game. And I know a lot of people really wanted them to go with a linebacker high, and they were really excited when they drafted a linebacker in the second round. But for all intents and purposes, he's a linebacker in name only. Yeah. Because there is no designated NFL position that captures what he provides to the defense, which is this versatile weapon who can line up in the slot, who can win around the edge as a pass rusher, who can chase down plays in pursuit, who can explode through gaps into the backfield and make tackles for loss. Like, he is an excellent player, and I think we all know that. The question is, how is he going to be deployed in the NFL, and is that going to make best use of his strengths, as well as minimizing the deficiencies that he has, which his deficiencies are pretty much just, we don't know if he's capable of doing this yet because we haven't seen him do it. Not that he can't, it's just he hasn't. And until he shows that he can, I would prefer him to be lining up, outside of the box, outside of the tackle box, wider, maybe not necessarily being that slot corner, but I think that's more of his game than a Mike linebacker, which, he should never be doing. So it's going to be really interesting to not only see where they put him, but of how quickly he gets onto the field, because I think as long as Malcolm Smith is here, he's the starting will. And then you have Jacob Phillips, who factors in the conversation, even though I think he's a Mike, but you have Walker to Mike. So it's really interesting because, well, JOK hasn't done linebacker things. He hasn't really done safety things either. Like he isn't playing too high. He's obviously never been that deep free angel guy, and he doesn't do the flat foot and turn and run with receivers like that. So there's a lot of uncertainty with his skill set and his role in the Browns defense, at least immediately. And I think training camp is just going to be focused on, what can this guy provide us right now in our defense, and who are we taking off the field to put him on? Because I think he'd definitely be one of their best 11 defenders right now. It's just a matter of, where exactly they think he fits long term. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him.
So Ed put out a pretty good comment here saying that Schwartz could be like the big year that Darius Hayward-Bay had, not the non-existent years. But I remember, and I don't know if it was his first or his second year, but I mean, that's all they had Hayward-Bay do was go deep.
Yeah.
I mean, just run go routes and stretch the field a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a very great memory of Darius Hayward-Bay, overall, but I mean, I could see a similar role. Ed's with us. He says that Sam is Stefanski smart. This is where we're at. He's letting everybody know.
Stefanski smart is what was the play where he challenged and I think it was that Tyreek Hill catch where it was clearly a catch, but he still challenged it. That's
just for a timeout.
Yeah.
It was a strategic timeout. That's what it was doing. That's what we got going on there.
We're not step up to actually use timeouts effectively compared to where we've come from.
I don't. Yeah. Last night we recorded with John Hillberry and Andy Lytle and his Not the Same Old Browns podcast, and we ranked all the head coaches since 1999. So the two of us just went down a memory lane tour of the greatest hits, including my favorite stat line of all time, because I got reminded of this one. Eric Mangenius, his first win as a head coach was 6-3 against the Buffalo Bills. I thought it was a snow game. It wasn't a snow game. I remember because it was so bad, my brain Mandela affected my head into thinking it was a snow game, and then someone pointed it out to me today that it wasn't. Derek Anderson was 2 of 17 for 23 yards and an interception in that game.
Yeah, it wasn't a snow game, and it wasn't a defensive battle either. It wasn't.
In the final field goal, Billy Cundiff's final field goal was in the waning moments. They didn't even get to 9 points, and like the whole game didn't get to 9 points till the fucking end. guys, I said this last night. I said, hey guys, I know people have been telling us that as Browns fans, we've been kind of like annoying since the playoffs. Go ahead and look at the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Oof. Nick, what do you got? We're almost out of time. I know you're raring to, you got something in there.
Do I? I'm still just coming off of that comment. You know what? I was literally angry last night as I was yelling and because we were just going through these old coaches and I'm just thankful that here we are, and I was thinking about this today. Kevin Stefanski is the most successful Browns coach since they've come back into the league, and he had the least time to prep, the least advantages, and the most obstacles. And so that's still just I have no idea how they made last year. And then you look at the secondary held together by duct tape and super glue. I still have no idea how the Browns made it as far as they did last year.
How'd they win a playoff game? I mean, that defense.
Beat the Chiefs. Almost beat the Chiefs.
And I don't care that Chad Henne was out there.
No.
I don't know. I had one last question, actually. Are you concerned that either one of you guys, I saw this on the internet and I figured we would ask, is anybody concerned about Andrew Billings being overweight? I don't know that he is, but some people think he might be. I said I'm not concerned in the sense that he's got 2 months to get in shape. It'll be fine, but he showed up in what appeared to be bigger. Is anybody concerned?
No.
Okay.
When's the last time we had like a, what is he, 330 something? We haven't had a true space eating, 1, 2, 3 gap one tech.
That's what I said.
So I think it's just an adjustment period where people are like, is he supposed to be that big? Yeah, he is.
I think that was part of it for me too, because my first picture was, man, Andrew Billings is big. And then I remember everything I said last year when we signed him. I was like, man, we got this space, like you said, space eating guy. Like he's going to, he's going, you're not running up the middle because Billings, not because he's necessarily making a play, but he's just in the fucking way. Like, and he makes plays too. I think Billings is a good player, but like, he's just there. He's in the way, we got a comment in here that like, he's always been overweight. Like that's who he is. Like they, like, is he eating too much cereal or is it soup?
Yes.
Yeah, that is. You know what? I have one last question that I think is interesting to me because of this whole place we've gone with the way the Chiefs defense was able to play against the Browns without defense. And so obviously I understand that David Njoku isn't a receiver, but if they choose to use him more than they did last year, is that potentially a guy that also helps generate space or is threatening in any kind of that way?
I think so, because he's a far better athlete than all but 2 of the receivers in that group. So yeah, I mean he's a matchup nightmare. And he was their best tight end last year. He was their best blocker. He was their best receiver. And I know a lot of people want to run him out of town because he requested that trade, but they told him no, and he put his head down and he worked his rear off, and he was their best. He was the best player in that room, and he was the only guy in that Kansas City game who was capable of doing pretty much anything in the passing game. So I want to see him be utilized much more this season, not just as a pass blocker or a late games out of reach, just put the backup in. But I would want him starting. I want him playing a lot, and I want him targeted much more than he was because he certainly deserves it.
I think I would like, if I had to pick one long term, Hooper or Njoku, it's Njoku. I think that's where it's. I didn't know if the guy could block. He was down the stretch. He was a better blocker than Hooper was. Like I mean, down the stretch, it's like you said, Sam. He was the best tight end down the stretch, and I believe in every facet of the game down the stretch. Nate also says that he makes Malik Jackson look small. Malik Jackson is under 300 pounds, though. He is. Look what you're comparing him to, a new addition and a rookie. Yeah. Okay, hold on. Sorry, I got distracted. My dog started licking my foot. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. Sam, take this opportunity. Tell everybody where they can find you. They should already know, or whatever else you want to say to end us out of here.
You can find me on Twitter at Sam_Penix. You can find my work at Dog Pound Daily, primarily with stuff on the Browns. You can see my Twitter clip threads, which I spend far too much time on my Twitter page. Pretty much, if you can think of a player, he's probably got one. So, and then we also do full games during the season. So those are always fun. Unless we lose, then it's not fun. But we didn't lose very much last year, so that was good. So, but yeah, other than that, I appreciate you guys having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was I'm really glad because I don't think that nobody does that. And you said you spend a lot of time on it, but you know what, Sam, it's so not, especially about players that come in that I'm more ignorant on. I learned so much from just looking at the way you break down the clips and Malik McDowell. I had no idea. I didn't know anything about Malik McDowell. And so the stuff that you put out there is so informative. So I'm glad you spend all the time you do on those.
I appreciate
selfishly.
that. Like the point has never been to, show other people my football knowledge, which is non-existent. It's been to make these players and who they actually are, what they do, more accessible to people, and just an easy to digest format. You just play after play after play after play, and you can just see them, the good and the bad, and the in between. Just so you get the entire picture of these players. So I'm glad that people enjoy watching them and learning about these players, because that's I'm watching these guys anyways. I might as well put these out for other people to watch them too.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. So anyone that's made it this far, Jacob and I appreciate you being here. If you're on YouTube, please consider subscribing. That would mean the world to us. We love doing this. This has been episode 6. I don't know where all the time has gone, but the Baker Mayfield episode, I feel like it lived up to it. Sam, thank you for everything. I love how we have a loose leaf of topics and we just find our way to because I feel like I learned a lot today. So Ed's telling us we're 6-0. Love you, Ed. Thank you to everyone for being here. This has been episode 6. I'm Nick. Ooh, he's Jacob.
Here it is.
We found you. And as always, go Browns.
Go Browns.